Meet Reed Lance Rosenthal, rancher, #1 best-selling award-winning author, and unabashedly, unapologetically on the right side of the outstanding issues of our generation. But don't try to fence him in. Sometimes his positions will surprise you, because Reed is definitely his own man, with his own opinions. You might love him, you might hate him, but you won't be able to stop listening. Step over to the right side with Reed.
Howdy, listeners and viewers, coast to coast, the Gulf to the 51st state, and around the globe. Reed Lance Rosenthal on the Right Side Radio and the Cowboys Take on all the video channels everywhere. Please, if you're not listening to the show on the audio podcast on the rightsideradio.com or Blueberry and a whole host of places, Spotify, etc., and you're listening or watching this Wyoming guy yak at you face to face on the video channels, Gab Truth, Bardion, Pradion, YouTube, Rumble, you name it. Please give us a like, pass on the link if you like the show to people who need to know what I have to tell you. Because what I have to tell you is some stuff you just don't hear anywhere else. You know, it's kind of hidden treasure, and it's hidden treasure which is tantamount to your financial, perhaps your total survival with what's going on right now, and certainly to the safeguard of your freedoms and the freedoms of your family. So please hit the like, leave a comment, love comments, good, bad, ugly, indifferent, whatever, please leave them. And a lot of you email me and text me and all that kind of stuff, and I appreciate that too. On the Right Side Radio at Reagan.com, on the Right Side Radio at Reagan.com. If you want to leave an email, that'd be just fine. So, this is going to be a very short show. This is Memorial Day weekend. I hope you have a terrific 3-day event with friends, family, whatever. Don't forget what this weekend signifies, what this holiday is about. It's about all those men and women who gave their lives so that I could bring you this show, so that you could listen to this show, so that you could, shall we say, determine for yourself what course your life will lead, and who fought for the freedoms for you to make those decisions. And we owe them a huge debt of gratitude, from the soldiers there, the very first soldiers at the Lexington Green and the Concord Bridge way back there in 1775, April 19th. They shot her around the world. That was just a month ago, folks. It was just a month ago. The American nation was born, stood on its hind legs, and roared against the greatest empire on earth. So remember what this weekend is about as you enjoy it and as you celebrate it. So this show tonight, I'm going to have a little rant story for you and a little founder's quote. The rant story will probably make you chuckle. And it's going to be short. I have a couple of rat-a-tat-tats to bring you. Some are economics, some are just jaw-dropping. And I'm going to bring you up to speed on some recent court decisions here in the last week. The last show I did, just 4 or 5 days ago, I brought you up to speed on some huge Supreme Court cases. You should listen to it. I mean, these are huge cases. They affect virtually every aspect of your life and every aspect, in many ways, of your rights as an American, and certainly every tangent of the Constitution. But I'm going to bring you up to speed on what happened this week, because it's dizzying what's going on in the courts. And you need to know, because somehow nobody else is telling you, because I don't think anybody else wants you to know. You know, mushrooms are good things. They grow in the dark, and they're docile little plants. Yeah. First of all, before I get started, I told you I was going to bring an update on the real estate shows I did for you, and I am going to do that. However, so much happened in the markets, some of which will be in the rat-a-tat-tat, in the last week, particularly the bond markets around the globe, that affect interest rates, which affect house sales, which affect real estate, which affect values, that really, to bring it to you today, would be doing you an injustice because it's not up to speed. I'm going to be doing research over the next 3 or 4 days with what's happening because it's happening really fast now. I mean, the snowball of real estate is gathering steam as it unfortunately goes downhill. So next show we will have that, and the next show also, either if we have time, but sometime in the next 2 shows, and we will let you know in advance, I'm going to tell you about why Trump's best efforts, and he's sincere and he's trying to get peace over there in the Mideast, peace in the Ukraine, peace in Taiwan, peace between India and Pakistan, which could happen, why they will all come to naught, at least in the near future. And there's a reason for it. And it goes back to a show I brought you months ago, which was about the spheres of influence of Russia, China, and the United States. And when one of the 3 superpowers who now share a multipolar world, when they decide they want more than their share, there's problems, particularly when everything is interrelated, including the peace that Trump is trying to bring to all these regions. But that will be either next show or the show after. But it's kind of a fascinating study. All right, the founder's quote. Since we're talking about the Supreme Court again this show, and district courts who are running amok, district courts run amok. I mean, it could be like a spring break theme for judges. This is Abraham Lincoln. We the people are the rightful masters of both Congress and the courts. Not to overthrow the Constitution, but to overthrow the men who pervert the Constitution. How true is that? How true is that? And on the ranch story, so, I've told you over the last 8 weeks how dry it is and then how wet it got. And so, a ranch always gets its water from somewhere. And the water from somewhere is always affected by somewhere upstream. And a neighboring ranch, whom we're very good friends with, they're absolutely great people, love them to pieces, and we work cooperatively with them on many cases, have a new irrigator, a Peruvian. And the Peruvian evidently has not had a lot of experience with flood irrigation and the transport and transfer of water. So we've been running around this week, and listen, far better this than the alternative, which is not having any water to deal with, putting our Dutch boy fingers in the proverbial ranch reservoir dikes, as the water is moving like across the ranch. One day the ponds, the reservoirs are perfect. And the next day, they're coming over the overflow. You got to adjust everything downstream. You got to run around. You got to check them 4 times a day. And, just when we thought we had everything kind of under control. And what's the moral of this story? Well, it's when you think you have everything under control that it spins out of control. And that's true not just for the ranch, folks, but that's true for the world, as we will discuss in this and the upcoming next 2 shows. All right, enough of that, shall we? Student loans, a little rat-a-tat-tat for you. Student loans are now up to an 8% delinquent rate. In other words, more than 60 days past due. That's up from 1% just a year ago. That's a 700% increase in student loan delinquencies, folks. That's a $1.4 trillion deal. Could be a problem. And there are 9 million student loan borrowers. Okay, 8% is 780,000 people who are in default on their student loans. The average student loan payment is $586 a month. I mean, pretty steep. And of course, I'll have another story here for you with the courts. But that is the reason that universities are getting away with charging outrageous tuitions, because they know it's all subsidized by the government. I mean, this is really a backhanded payment to the universities by the government through the victims, which are the students who took out the loans. Think about that. That's exactly what it is. And of course, when a student borrower defaults on a loan, the ramifications are immediate and they are nasty. And their credit score is whacked, which means they can't get financing anywhere else. They can't buy a house. They can't buy a car. And I can go on and on. So you can see what kind of ripple effect this could have in the economy. There was an American Banker article that the student loan defaults could actually pose a systemic risk to the banking sector. And I might add that this article went on to talk about other systemic risks to the banking sector, including something we're going to talk about a little bit later in the show, what's happening in the bond markets, okay, which people really don't have a good clue. They don't have a good clue really even what they are, okay? But they are the foundation of our financial system, not banks, not money, not anything, not the Federal Reserve. The bond market is what determines whether or not actually at this point our financial system makes it or does not. 25% of Americans now, over the last 3 months, this is almost a doubling, cannot afford basic necessities. We're talking about food. People are now putting food on credit cards. This is not good. Not good. And this is not the fault of Trump and, yada, 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 all the mainstream media, Democrat BS. This is the fault of the policies of Barack Hussein Obama and some of the presidents before him, I might add, over the last 12 of the last 16 years. His first and second terms and his third term through, Joe Biden. Now that everybody, yes, he really was senile, but we didn't know, or we were told to keep quiet, or we had no idea he had fourth stage prostate cancer because, that comes on overnight, folks. I mean, 1 hour you have it, 1 hour you don't, or 1 hour you don't, 1 hour you do. And of course, the President of the United States doesn't undergo rigorous physicals on a very frequent periodic basis. Okay. You can decipher all that for yourself, right? Which brings us to our first kind of financial story. So the bond market in the United States is wheezy, shall we say. There was a Treasury auction last Thursday. That's just a few days ago. And shall we say it was not received warmly by the market. And they had to jack up interest rates to get bonds sold. And it is rumored that the Fed had to step in and buy some of the surplus. What's happening across the globe, however, is even more worrisome because all this stuff is connected. And in Japan, bond yields are spiking. That means the rates are going up, which means the value of the bonds are going down, right? Rates move inversely, or yields move inversely to price in the bond market. When an interest rate rises on a bond, the bond is worth less. When an interest rate falls on a bond, the bond is worth more. Think about it. If you buy a 5% 30-year bond and interest rates fall to 2%, think about the extra value you have in your higher interest rate. That's why the bond is worth more. The converse is true. And if you're a bank that holds bonds and the market moves against you, that doesn't do good things to your balance sheet, which doesn't help you much with the federal examiners, which doesn't help you much staying in business. Remember Signature Bank and our friends out there in Seattle who got bailed out by Janet Yellen? Yeah, great. All right, so across the globe, bond markets are in flux, shall we say. And all these markets are connected to one another. Okay, it's one of the things we're going to talk about in the next upcoming show, why, unfortunately, it's my belief that these peace deals are not going to happen in the near future. Although I'd love them to, and Trump sincerely wants them to, and he's working his butt off to get them done. But the odds are stacked against him, okay? The selfish desires of other countries are going to interfere with what he's trying to get done. Because in the end, everybody's in it for themselves, aren't they? Yes. And you'll have to excuse me as one of the reasons this is going to be a short show, too, is that the light is fading here over the ranch. The western sun is sinking slowly under the western ridges, and as you can tell, it's no longer kind of sunlight, it's kind of dusk light. And when it gets dark, you wouldn't even be able to see me, so I got to talk fast. All right. The courts. We had a district court appointed by Obama. There's such a thread that runs through all these folks that are making decisions, judges gone wild. They enjoined the Trump administration's removal of grants from Harvard University. If I remember correctly, it was about $750 million in grants. Harvard University has a $38 billion endowment. And why is the United States taxpayer paying anything to any university? Never mind a university that's woke, that's anti-American, and additionally has $38 billion of its own money. Obviously, there is no reason other than that gives the government the ability to, shall we say, influence what the children are taught. Yes. So this judge has enjoined the Trump administration's ability to just stop funding universities. Really? I think I know how that's going to come out when it gets to the Supreme Court. Another district judge, another Obama appointee. This is such a theme, he ruled that the Trump administration, the Department of Education, cannot take DEI training, right? Diversity, equity, inclusion training out of schools. Really? And since when does a district judge, never mind an improper nationwide injunction, which is at the Supreme Court right now, that power, where does he come off telling a local school board what they can and can't have in there? Really? Wow. I think I know how that one's going to come out too. There was a charter school case, a religious charter school case that went to the Supreme Court here in the last week. Amy Coney Barrett had to recuse herself because she's heavily into the religious school thing, if you will. And she rightfully recused herself. And the vote was 4-4 in the Supreme Court of the United States, which means that the ruling of the Oklahoma Supreme Court in that case stands. And their ruling was that the government cannot give money, taxpayer money, to any school with a religious bent, religious foundation, whatever, that it was unconstitutional. So there you go. The Supreme Court ruled temporarily, at least. It was a ruling by Justice Roberts, and the full court's going to consider it later, that a FOIA request, which the left, of course, the left slapped on DOJ to, befuddle, confuse, hinder delay, could not be forced by the Democrats. That DOJ did not, at least for this time period, have to spend its time or money or resources answering a FOIA request. And they argued, by the way, that it's not an agency, it's a department, which puts it in a different light under the law when it comes to FOIA requests. I'm not saying whether I agree, disagree, whatever. This is just what's going on. The Supreme Court, and this was 2 weeks ago, the Supreme Court upheld the Trump administration's military ban on transgenders. The military does not have to accept you into its ranks if you are a transgender. By the way, do you know who the first president was who allowed transgender into the military? 3 guesses. Oh, that's right. Barry. BHO. Barack Hussein Obama. Of course. An appeals court, a United States federal appeals court, I think a terrible decision, has ruled that North Carolina, and this is after a whole bunch of United States District Court rulings, state court rulings, the North Carolina Supreme Court all siding with Republicans who have, shall we say, suspicions about ballots that were cast in the Supreme Court race down there. The Democrat very narrowly won in somewhat suspicious circumstances. And they wanted to cure those ballots. In other words, prove up those ballots came from real people, were legal, et cetera, et cetera. All these courts ruled that the Republicans had the right to do that, except for the appeals court. So this one is on its way to the Supreme Court also. So here you have a classic case of common sense election integrity that is being purposely undermined by activist judges at this particular appeals court because it still leans left. Trump didn't get to replace some of the justices in it. They were replaced instead by Biden, i.e. Obama third term. So don't you feel good about the fact that your ballot is protected? Don't you think the veterans, those men and women who died that we're honoring this weekend, Memorial Day weekend, who fought for your one person, one vote rights, amongst many others, what do you think they think of that ruling the week of Memorial Day? Yeah, all right. We shall see where that court case goes, but it's going to the Supremes, and hopefully they will rule that whatever they need to rule to uphold the sanctity of a ballot cast by an American citizen in the rightful location once, hopefully. You have a great Memorial Day weekend. We will talk to you the first of next week. Got 2 great shows back to back coming at you. And see, I kept this short as I promised. Be safe. Enjoy your friends and family. Remember what this weekend is about, folks. Millions died so you could enjoy this weekend. Keep the wind at your back. This is Reed Lance Rosenthal on the Right Side Radio and the Cowboys Take. And by the way, everything I talked about, articles are on the website on therightsideradio.com. Read them to get the details. Some of these court cases they'll stun you. I'll just leave it at that. All right. Talk to you soon.
Please remember, if you've missed any shows, just click on Show Archive and you'll find all of his shows. We look forward to seeing you here again next week for another episode of Reed Lance Rosenthal on the Right Side.